yes, there are moments in which you are required to be professional, in which you're required to be put together and kind of maintain the decorum that you would associate with any ambassador, but it's also important to be personable. You can be professional, but you do have to remember that at the same time, you are connecting with people, and it's the connections with individuals that matter. And it took me a trip halfway around the world, a truly traumatic and devastating event, to realize that. But I think if many people can realize that it's all about connections with individuals and finding stories and anecdotes and emotional moments to forge connections, those are more powerful than any trades of words, handshakes, treaties, etc., etc. Being an ambassador is about connecting with individuals and not just forging connections and maintaining agreements.
Hey everyone, welcome to Girls Can, a series of podcasts created to help educate and inform young women throughout the world.
Our goal is to empower and inspire the next generation because the girls of today become the future leaders of tomorrow.
Hey everyone, welcome to Girls Can. My name's Grace and I'm here with my sister Abigail. Today, we have a special guest in the studio. Abigail, can you introduce our very distinguished guest?
Today, we welcome Aaryan Morrison, the winner of the 2018 National Scholarship Program Distinguished Young Woman. Aaryan is a skilled ballet dancer and former member of her school's wind ensemble. In addition, she has also spent time as a student ambassador to China. Aaryan has just finished her freshman year at Harvard University, and she is here today to share her high school and college experiences, as well as the memories she has formed while being a contestant for Distinguished Young Woman. So, Aaryan, tell us about your first year of college and tell us about the transition from high school to college.
My first year of college has been one of the best ever. I just finished my first year at Harvard University, where I'm pursuing a joint concentration in social studies and African studies with a language citation in Swahili. Now, that all sounds super nice, but to get there, it was a little bit traumatic. I am from a small town called Kokomo in the state of Indiana. So moving to a city like Cambridge, which is right near Boston, was a huge change for me. I think public transportation is one of the most magical things ever. We didn't have public transportation in my hometown, but having public transportation to facilitate my movement around campus, around the greater Cambridge area, and even into Boston has been awesome. My parents prepared me really, really well to make the transition. I've been traveling all my life. I've spent extended periods of time away from home before, learning how to meet new people, how to live with new people. So moving to college was not as tedious of a task as many people make it out to be. There were always the times where I was homesick or where I just wanted to sleep in my own bed. But I learned to appreciate Harvard as my new home, as my dorm room, as my new bedroom. And, we made it. We made it work.
Awesome. So tell us about your major.
Yeah. So again, Harvard is kind of weird. We like to do things in our own very unique way. Instead of calling majors, we call them concentrations. So that is why at the beginning I said a joint concentration in social studies and African studies. So how I arrived at this is sort of the traditional first year college student story. I went in wanting to concentrate in government, but I very, very quickly changed my mind. That traditional first year undergraduate mind change that always happens when I realized that government, the way that it's taught at Harvard, is very top down. You look at the big issues, you look at policy, you look at big governmental bodies and how those bodies make change. That is not a bad thing at all, but I realized that I'm much more of a bottom-up person. I want to learn about individuals. I want to learn about smaller microcosms of cultural systems or nations, just smaller units of the population and how change that happens within those small units impacts large-scale things like governments. So when I came to this realization, I flipped and social studies was calling my name. At Harvard, social studies is an interdisciplinary field. We study economics, we study history, we study anthropology, we study sociology. So it's all of these social sciences all lumped into one. It's often called the concentration for the indecisive because you get to study a whole bunch of things, which is perfect for me because I'm quite an indecisive person. So it lets me remain indecisive while still acting like I am a strong-willed decision maker. Within social studies, you also have to pick some sort of focus to contain all of the different things you are able to do. So that focus can be a regional focus. And I have preliminarily chosen Sub-Saharan Africa as my regional focus. And because of this, I decided to just kind of lob on African studies because that will, one, it will look better on my degree, but it also just makes a lot more sense with the way that I plan to navigate the rest of my academic career time at Harvard. So I'm in for a good time.
What was the college application process like for you?
So applying to college was a very, very stressful experience. I'm sure lots of people can relate. I went into the process not really knowing what I wanted for myself other than that I wanted prestige. And this is an awful way to go into the process. I realize that now. But going in, I said, I want something prestigious. I want something big. And so I ended up with this list with all of the Ivy Leagues, schools like Stanford, the University of Chicago, all of these highly selective schools. And it was a very long list. I sat down with my college counselors one day and they said, hey, in all reality, you're going to kill yourself trying to apply to all of these schools because it's just not possible. You're going to be miserable, and that's not what this process should be. So my counselors had me cut down that list and really look at what I wanted to do, what I wanted for myself, and then to match schools that would actually give me that experience. So I got my list down to 5 schools, and I ended up applying to 2 of my top choices early. And I got into both of them. And so I thought I was done. Those 2 schools did not include Harvard. So when I applied to Harvard, it was very much an after the fact sort of thing. My parents said, hey, this is always something you've wanted to do. You are into 2 amazing schools. If Harvard does not yield itself as one of the final choices, it's okay because you know right now you're going to be happy with the schools that you do have to choose from. So I applied to Harvard in their regular decision cycle. I got my acceptance in March, and then I had a few months to make the decision. That was the awful part, trying to make that final decision. It was a huge decision to make because on one hand, I had been accepted to Harvard, which is anybody's dream. And I was so tempted to move away from home, to expose myself to new experiences, to a new diversity of experiences that I don't get all the time in Kokomo, Indiana. But on the other hand, I had also been offered a full ride from my state school. And in talking with my parents, I discovered that it was, one, very important to them that I do what I want to do with my education, but it was also very important that I make wise, non-impulsive decisions, especially considering the amount of college debt students are burdened with these days. So the call of a full ride that was close to home was very, very tempting. And it was a lot of conversations with my parents to finally figure out what was going to work best for the family. And in having these conversations with my parents, it finally came out that although we do want you to make a wise, well-reasoned choice that will leave you, better off in the future, better off takes a variety of forms, so that's completely open to interpretation. It is most important to us that you are happy in these next 4 years of your life, that you choose an experience which will allow you to grow and become the person that you want to be. And if Harvard has that experience for you, you should run towards it. So very, very encouraging words from my parents that finally helped me to make the decision on the very final day that I could make the decision, I should add, that Harvard was going to be the place for me.
You mentioned your parents a lot, so how have your parents influenced you?
Oh, I am everything that I am because of my parents. They are absolute role models. About 20 years ago, they moved to the United States from South Africa. And having that identity as a first-generation American, a South African American, has been one of the guiding forces for many of the things that I've gone on to do in high school and that I want to do for the rest of my life. They taught me how to hold values and how to hold strong to those values. So moving into a time like college that's filled with lots of changes, lots of transitions, lots of self-discovery, it's their template that I've used to hold fast to the values that truly define who I am. And so all of the changes that do happen to me happen around those core values, which they gave me countless years ago. From them, I've learned how to love, I've learned how to sacrifice, I've learned how to laugh, I've learned how to be a better big sister to my younger brother. I've truly learned everything from them, and just to have them at my back throughout everything that I do is one of the most wonderful parts of being me.
They sound like wonderful people.
That they are.
How did you get involved with Distinguished Young Women?
Distinguished Young Woman is something that was integrated into my dance studio. So I found out about it through my dance studio. I've danced since I was about 4 years old. And I can't remember the first time I went to a Distinguished Young Woman program. At the time, it was called Junior Miss, but it was something that was very well known around my dance studio. All senior girls, or most senior girls at the dance studio, would go on to participate in Junior Miss. And it was just a thing that all of the younger girls did, was to go watch them as they competed in the program. So it was kind of like a rite of passage, or more like a legacy sort of thing. You watched the senior girls do the program. You were inspired by them. You wanted to be them. And so a logical next step in becoming them was also doing Junior Miss to become Distinguished Young Woman. So it was just something that I'd seen many of my dance teammates do before me. And so it was a very natural thing in my dance world to just go on to do the program when I became a senior in high school as well.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. So you mentioned you dance.
Yes.
And you take very hard classes. You're an AP scholar. You did really well on the SAT or ACT. So how did you manage it all?
Great question. At times it got a little bit hectic, but it was all about prioritizing. One of my best tools throughout high school to manage everything was the use of a planner. I was a very, very diligent planner keeper. So if you saw Aaryan, she was with her planner. I had all of these colored gel pens that I would use to fill out my planner every day. So anytime something new would come up on my to-do list, it would be written down instantly, so I didn't forget. And then at the end of the day, before I even went home, before I had the chance to truly relax after a day of school, I would prioritize everything in the order of due date or order of importance or duration of how long it was going to take me to do said thing or accomplish said task. Then I would go home, take some time to myself to just, eat a snack, decompress from the day, and then start on that list. And it was all about prioritizing on that list that made it a non-stressful experience. Because if I prioritized correctly, then I didn't really have any reason to be stressed. So there was that, but then there's also just the very abstract concept of knowing yourself and knowing how you work. You have to know when you can trust yourself to get something done and when you have to be honest with yourself and say, I know I'm going to procrastinate on this. Whatever way you work is fine. I think people get into this habit of condemning their work styles and saying, I need to change my work style to better fit, to be more proactive, to manage my time. But if you truly take the time to understand yourself and understand the way that you work, I think it's then quite easy to navigate time management, because if you know you procrastinate, then just allocate more time for you to get something done. If you know you stress easily, but stress makes you proactive, then maybe wait until the last second to do something, and then you're going to be able to trust yourself to do it well, because stress helps you be productive and execute something to the best of your ability.
Right.
So once I took the time to learn myself, to know that I was a big fan of making lists, to know that I was a big fan of meticulously prioritizing those lists, then I could just trust myself to follow through with those lists and make everything happen the way that I wanted it to.
What was it like being a student ambassador to China?
Oh, that was one of the most incredible experiences to date. I have been a student ambassador to China twice, once when I was a sophomore in high school, and then just after I graduated from high school, moving on to college. So the first time I went, I was an ambassador to Beijing and Anshan, and that experience was incredibly eye-opening. There are kind of two big components of that experience. So one is to point out that Anshan is Kokomo, my hometown's sister city in China. So my town in Indiana has a population of about 55,000 people. We are a manufacturing town. We make lots of auto parts. We're big in the auto industries. Most residents of my city are employed by automotive manufacturing. In Anshan, China, the population is around 4 million people, and it is also a manufacturing town. There are many steel plants in Anshan. So it sounds like an unlikely partnership, especially because Kokomo is so small and Anshan is so much larger. But relatively speaking, in terms of their home countries, they are about the same size. Kokomo is to the United States what Anshan is to China. So that link was forged between the governments of our two cities, and Anshan had been sending students to my high school for many years to learn English. And so it was finally time for us to reciprocate and send students from my school to one of the schools in Anshan. So that was how the partnership was forged. being an international baccalaureate student, I was able to have a host of international opportunities. And through being an IB student, this is how this one came about. Now, we traveled to China this first time with a group of, I think there were about 8 of us, 8 students and 3 chaperones. And one of the chaperones' name was Miss Peoples. She had been my high school English teacher. She was one of the best teachers I had had. And she was the teacher that was in charge of teaching the Chinese students English when they would come to the United States. So she was an integral figure. She had been to China many times and she loved it. She unfortunately passed away on that trip. So on our 4th day in China, we were without a chaperone. And we were down one chaperone, I should say. And we had just traveled to a new school that day. And one of the students at that school, that my host student, the one that was showing me around, asked me, said, "Oh, is Miss Peoples here? I've been to Kokomo. She was my English teacher, and I was looking forward to seeing her again." And this was a very, very fresh event, so the emotion was still quite raw. And I remember just looking at her, opening my mouth to try and answer her question, and then I just broke down into tears. And she didn't know what was happening, but she hugged me and then she also started crying. And so in the middle of this soccer field at a school in China, miles and miles and miles from home, here I was hugging this girl that I had met about 5 minutes ago, both of us mourning the death of somebody that was very, very important to us. In that moment, I learned one of my most important lessons about being a student ambassador or an ambassador of any type. That yes, there are moments in which you are required to be professional, in which you're required to be put together and kind of maintain the decorum that you would associate with any ambassador, but it's also important to be personable. You can be professional, but you do have to remember that at the same time, you are connecting with people, and it's the connections with individuals that matter. And it took me a trip halfway around the world, a truly traumatic and devastating event, to realize that. But I think if many people can realize that it's all about connections with individuals and finding stories and anecdotes and emotional moments to forge connections, those are more powerful than any trades of words, handshakes, treaties, etc., etc. Being an ambassador is about connecting with individuals and not just forging connections and maintaining agreements.
Words of wisdom. So you are a very well-known international leader for women and girls of very young ages. What advice would you give to girls who wanted to become a leader or are trying to figure out how to lead?
I think one of the best ways to find your leadership style is to ask those closest to you. So in my case, the first time I fully started to realize myself as a leader was at my dance studio. For the longest time, I danced with girls that were much, much older than me, but there was a time that all of them graduated and it was just me. But it was never just me. There were also girls younger than me that were looking up to me. And when I became friends with them, we got close and they were able to say, "Hey, I look up to you. I admire you because of this." And listening to the things that other people are saying about the ways that you naturally lead and naturally inspire help you to then sit down with yourself and say, okay, I'm good at these things and maybe I'm weak in these other areas that I've seen other female leaders, emulate better than I can. So what can I do so that my strengths are still the ways in which I lead and my weaknesses are not detriment to myself as a leader, but they are also a strength. So there's that. There's talking to the people around you that already see you as a leader. And then there's being authentic. Being authentic is one of the most, in my opinion, important characteristics of being a leader. If you can't be authentic, if you can't be true to yourself, if you can't be true to the ones that you are leading, then you are going to be so much worse off when you try and start a big initiative or a big movement. If you can be authentic, if you can know yourself and honor the things that you want for yourself and the things that you want for your group, you are going to be ahead of the curve every time. If you can be authentic, you are also going to better resonate with all of those that have chosen to follow you. Because if they see you as just a leader, as just somebody that is at the forefront of everything that they're doing, there's going to be a disconnect on a very, very personal level between you and those that follow you. But if you can be authentic and true to yourself, and those people can see parts of themselves in the leader that you are, then you're going to have a much closer knit community behind you. And so you yourself as a leader will be stronger. And there's just going to be so much more trust and so much more mutual understanding on a very, very personal level to your leadership and to all of the initiatives that you and your group do.
What was the best memory of you being involved in Distinguished Young Women?
Yeah, this is a tough one. So when I saw you guys sent me this, I had to think long and hard about it, not because I don't know what to say. Well, I mean, yeah, I don't know what to say, but because so many good things have happened that pinpointing one is so difficult. So I'm just going to give you a few that come to mind. So one of my favorite memories from the past year would be meeting with this program's most famous alumnus, Diane Sawyer. She was our national representative in the 60s. She's gone on to have an incredible career in politics, in government, and finally in broadcasting. She's probably best known for all of the work in broadcasting that she's done. We had a 30-minute meeting conversation at her office in New York City, and it was awesome. I was sitting in the chair, clutching the arms. Every time she would ask me a question, I would have to just reorient myself and compose myself to be able to answer her. And so it was really cool because so many years separate our time in the program, but we were able to reminisce about the same sorts of experiences being the national representative for a program like this. It was really cool because we moved on from that to talk about how the role of a female, the image of a female has changed over the years. So that was really, really awesome. Another favorite memory that I have from the year was going back to my home state of Indiana to celebrate the 60th anniversary of Indiana's Distinguished Young Women program, except the program is held in my hometown. So I got to go home and to celebrate the 60th anniversary of my state's program as the national representative for the year. So it was this experience full of serendipity, and it was awesome to be able to go home and say thank you to my friends, my family, all of the people at home that have made me the woman I am today, that have made me successful in this program, not just in this program, but also in college and just in life in general. So a highly emotional experience, but it was so incredibly humbling, so much gratitude, and it was very, very cool that all of that just happened to coincide with each other. And then I probably think the crowning jewel of memories is not any one moment, but just all of the other girls that I've met through the program. My sisters in the class of 2018 are incredible women. I go to school with one of them now. She's one of my closest friends at school. Having the has-beens back with me this week, so other girls from my class of 2018, we were all competing together last year, has been great because these are people I see on Instagram, I see on Facebook, we text each other often, but to then see them in person and to recreate all of the tears, hugs, and screaming that we left with is really, really special. To be able to watch the girls from the class of 2019 embark on the same path of growth and self-discovery that I did in this 2-week period last year has also been really rewarding, just to see myself in all of them and to be able to reflect on everything that's changed and happened to me over the past year is just, I'm at a loss for words. It's been really, really awesome.
For our last question, what is one book that you would recommend to all girls reading before they go to college?
This is a really, really great question. I'm actually going to recommend a book written by one of my classmates. It's a book, one of my college classmates, I should say. It's a book called Tell Me Who You Are, and it is about racial literacy in the United States. And so what they've done is they've taken the statistics and historical anecdotes that many people hear in the classroom about race and put them in a contemporary perspective by pairing them with stories from real individuals around the country about how race has factored into their development. It goes back to what I was saying earlier about what makes a good ambassador, about those moments in China where my friends and I connected on a deeper emotional level. It's pairing all of the abstract facts and figures and historical anecdotes that seem so far away, everything that we think we know about being something, and bringing it down to real stories and real experiences and the moments that make history, the moments that form all of those statistics. It's an incredible read written by girls that are no older than ourselves, because they realized there was a need for a better conversation about racial literacy in the United States. So I would highly, highly recommend it to any girl moving forward into college that will be interacting with people different from her.
That sounds amazing. Thank you so much for coming out. We enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you so, so much for having me. Good luck in the rest of your podcast series.
Thank you. This has been Girls Can, a podcast and an organization dedicated to improving the lives of young women in our community.
We want to encourage young women to make a difference through education and service.
Because the girls of today become the future leaders of tomorrow. Because the girls of today become the future leaders of tomorrow.